Good day, everybody. I'm Bob Hoban, and I'm here with my partner, Jeffrey Friedland, and this is the Cannabis Insider. Today's topic will be the World Health Organization and its recent announcement that CBD should not be listed as a scheduled substance. And the practical implication of this is perhaps more far-reaching than one might think, because as we look at cannabis policy across the United States and as it evolves around the world, a lot of times we refer back to something called the 1961 UN Convention on Narcotics, and that effectively has shaped how our country here in the United States has handled the adoption of the Controlled Substances Act and its treatment of cannabis and marijuana. And it's a seldom or little understood implication for this industry and for our policymakers across the U.S. But with that said, the U.S. FDA had solicited opinions back in November of 2017. It solicited commentary from anyone who wanted to comment, from the public at large, concerning CBD and the implications of it as a quote-unquote beneficial or useful product or constituent in the marketplace. And then subsequently, back in December, around the middle of December 2017, the World Health Organization made this announcement. And that's who the FDA was gathering information for and in conjunction with. Jeff, what does this mean? What does the World Health Organization mean to the cannabis industry in the United States and beyond?
Well, I think, it's very, very complicated. You alluded to and stated about the United Nations Single Convention on Narcotic Trafficking. The United States bullied the rest of the world, Bob, to pass that international treaty, that convention. And that convention led to, as you indicated, the U.S. to be compliant with the terms of that international treaty, the Controlled Substances Act. The problem we have now, the World Health Organization, yeah, it's another UN agency, and somewhat yawn and go to sleep time, because you don't hear much about the United Nations anymore. But the problem we run into this is that if in reality we need to get rid of that single convention on narcotic trafficking. And that will not happen. It will not happen, Bob, because of two countries, Russia and China. They both can veto at a Security Council level, and they're both vehemently against narcotic trafficking and marijuana, even though obviously I believe you might know better than I think hemp's grown in Russia and hemp is grown in Southwest China. So it's a very complicated situation, but my concern of the WHO saying this is great. We all believe it. A lot of people are benefiting from CBD, a lot of health benefits, but my concern always has to do where you have the greater good and the benefits of CBD, whether the WHO says it or whether even the FDA acknowledges that, why they took public comments, bumping up against private rights. And private rights come back to, Bob, as you and I have discussed on numerous occasions, it'll be the approval for sale of Epidiolex by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, GW Pharmaceuticals, plant-derived CBD formulation will be the first time that the U.S. government acknowledges that there is a medical benefit from this plant, from this cannabis plant. That's the real question. And GW Pharmaceuticals, irrespective of what WHO says or what Americans who, responded in November and gave their opinions to the FDA, what happens under the U.S. FDA current policy as it relates to that molecule being approved as a drug? What happens with all the patents that GW Pharmaceuticals has that they now will have coming this summer probably, a economic reason to enforce their intellectual property rights? That's a bigger issue. So I don't see the WHO can come out in favor of it, but if you want to change an international treaty on this, good luck.
Well, the United States, of course, has the Controlled Substances Act, and the Controlled Substances Act schedules substances, Schedule 1, 2, 3, 4, and on down that list. And then there's other categories of things that might be beneficial that might qualify, or might not qualify rather, for those schedules themselves. So it seems to be what the World Health Organization is saying here is they say CBD should not be a scheduled substance. Now, to those watching this and to non-lawyers, frankly to lawyers, something that's a scheduled substance would seem to indicate that it has some sort of impact on the human body that may or may not treat or address a specific condition. And if it's scheduled and you walk it through that process, an approval by the FDA, then the FDA will approve it, much like Epidiolex, which we expect to be approved this summer, is officially sanctioned as a scheduled substance that can address a specific human ailment or condition. So I can't make heads or tails of what the WHO is doing here. A, it should not be a scheduled substance, okay? But then, out of the other side of its mouth, the report states that this has shown preliminarily that it is very, very beneficial and useful to treat Alzheimer's disease, Crohn's disease, certain forms of cancer, Parkinson's disease, and other serious conditions. So if it shouldn't be scheduled, then why are you saying that it treats these other conditions and ailments? Because doesn't it track necessarily that if it treats things, that it should be somehow, some way a scheduled substance?
Well, but Bob, it's called anecdotal data. The fact that it works for Alzheimer's, all these other diseases, is not acknowledged scientific data. It's not acknowledged by the FDA. The first time the U.S. government will acknowledge that there's a benefit from CBD, the FDA will acknowledge it, is when Epidiolex gets approved, and that's only approving that molecule, CBD, for the use for Dravet syndrome and other kinds of pediatric epilepsy. So all these other benefits from a scientific perspective is anecdotal. Show me the science. Now, you believe it, I believe it. Scientists, regulators, FDA says, do the trials.
No, that's exactly right. And look, we're coming up on the Winter Olympics here in South Korea. Another significant thing is that the World Anti-Doping Organization ultimately came out and said that CBD products are not something that are on their banned list, and that I'll expect that we'll see both a number of cannabinoid or CBD production companies trying to sponsor athletes in and around the Olympics, but it also puts these things on a world stage and really prompts this issue, because this issue needs to be addressed in some form or fashion. The question of whether this is a scheduled drug or should be, because in the United States it is not a per se scheduled substance now, or whether or not it should simply be a natural product. And at the end of the day, it's probably a combination of the two. It's probably a natural product on one side, and it's probably a pharmaceutical drug on the other side, which somehow, some way requires a scheduling action. But those things remain to be seen, and we'll see how this plays out during the Olympics. What do you think about that international stage of the Olympics as bringing some light on this issue? Do you think that's overblown, or do you think that's realistic?
Well, I think, look, any of this helps. Any kind of anecdotal information helps. You talk about NFL players, and, I know, Bob, you're involved in Athletes for Care, a nonprofit. You're on the board. I did a video segment with them talking about the use of CBD for head injuries, and they're big proponents of it. There's a lot of advocates out there regarding the use of CBD, and I think you are right that there will be phytocannabinoids will be a health and wellness product in the United States, and I think CBD becomes a drug under FDA jurisdiction. And I think that's exactly how it shakes out, and I think that those two regimes, so to speak, will coexist. You'll have a health and wellness, phytocannabinoid-rich, hemp-derived oil product. You'll have CBD as FDA-approved pharmaceuticals.
So it sounds like the answer is that the WHO is right, that it shouldn't be scheduled, necessarily because it provides therapeutic benefits in the natural marketplace, but there is at least preliminary evidence that it can specifically treat a variety of ailments, which would, in the future, when proven, create the pharmaceutical-based, FDA-approved type marketplace. And I agree 100% with you that that's how it's going to roll out in the United States and likely beyond. With that said, thank you for tuning in to the Cannabis Insider. As always, I thank my partner, Jeff Friedland. And if you like this content and you want to see other related content, do check out cannabisinsider.tv, cannabisinsider.tv, and we'll see you next time.